Starting. Okay. So the recording has started, Jim, and I will, let me just share this. So you can start anytime, Jim.
Okay, meeting is called to order. Hello, Susan. Didn't expect to see you. Very nice. If you would please call the roll.
Certainly, if I can get David's screen off here now.
Want me to close it? No,
That would be good for a minute.
just for a minute. Okay, hold on.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Castagnoli,
Here.
Mr. Cater,
Present.
Mr. Mortimer,
Present.
Mr. Quish.
Present.
There we go. And I see Mr. Is it Texta?
Texta, yeah. You got
Texta, okay. I saw you here. And for staff, there's David and myself. Very good.
And Joe, is your screen okay? Because we're seeing your screen breaking.
It last time it did this and it went away after a couple of minutes.
Oh, okay.
It just goes away.
Okay.
Very good.
I hope it does. I'm getting dizzy.
Yeah, I'll put the agenda back up.
Yeah, if you want to put just audio only, Joe, for a while, it might
Say it
be
again.
distracting. If you do audio only and not the video, might be beneficial.
Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay, go ahead.
I can still see you too, but it's okay. Okay, so we have the draft POCD. I got to spend a little bit of time on it today. I think that because we didn't have a ton of time, I don't think anyone really tore it apart too intensely. So I think it's probably best just to have Adam present it. And Adam, I'd ask you if you, because I did make a few notes, would you like us to comment for potential adjustments now, or just keep notes and have you run the whole thing and then send you notes?
Yeah, good question. I think, can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Louder would be good.
I think what would be great is I'll just do a brief sort of overview of the POCD. David and I talked, I'll be coming back. We'll have to, at the end of this meeting, once you all have had an opportunity to dig into it in a little bit more depth. I know that you all just got it today. If there are any questions that you have that would sort of help you in your review process, I'm certainly open to questions now, but I don't think we need to get into, suggested changes or modifications yet. I think it's still, I'd like to give you all a little bit of time to dig into it before we talk about it. Does that make sense?
Sure. Well, it's whatever you feel is the highest and best use of your time. I'm all for that.
Cool. So let me try sharing my screen. We will hopefully get it right. I'm on a different computer today, so hopefully that's a little bit better. Can you all see the POCD?
Yep.
Excellent. Now on this last, but it's not going to let me show it in the layout view, which I think is a little bit better. So I'm just going to stay in this view, if that's okay with everybody. So
the only thing, Adam, is that you're on the right side of the screen, and so are the pictures of the people. Oh no, you're on both sides. Okay, I see what you're doing.
Cool.
We're good.
So the POCD, one of the big things that we've done with your POCD is just really slimmed it down in terms of page count. You were over 100 pages. We're now down to about 75. That hasn't been at the expense of content. It's really been trying to clean up the formatting, making sure things are a little bit clearer, better organized, and a way to hopefully make it a little bit easier for you all to find what you need to get the information you want, and for people to not feel so intimidated with the document. All of the, I'll call them elements, are still there. We haven't taken out any elements as part of this plan. There's a sort of welcome message here. And then each section sort of starts with a short introduction that gives an overview of the element and some background on existing conditions for each of the elements. So most of the time there are some sub themes that we sort of dig into, and there is a lot of background information that is sort of being provided to the reader or to you all to sort of support the recommendations. But one of the big things that we did in this document, and you'll see over again, is in this section here, we have stripped out any of the recommendations. So it is all background information, it's all content to help you better understand and for readers to better understand the content. And then what we've done is we have consolidated all of the recommendations at the end of each section or chapter into usually a single page that's got all of the recommendations. And we've done something which I think is really important here, which is we've organized your recommendations in terms of goals and strategies. And one of the things that was in your sort of current POCD is you kind of had goals in your text and you had some strategies intermingled in there, but it wasn't abundantly clear to the reader sort of what's the goal, and the goal is something that really should remain relatively unchanged. And then what are the strategies? And the strategies can sort of adopt and change over time a little bit more. They can be a little bit more flexible as new funding sources come available, as the regulatory environment changes. That list can sort of evolve and change, and then you can be a little bit clearer keeping track what you've accomplished and what you haven't accomplished coming out of the POCD. So a lot of the content remains the same in terms of what we're discussing. It's been updated. So David has done a good deep dive into it early in the process to sort of identify what needed updates. We've gone through and updated data. All of the maps have been updated. One of the things that we've done here with the POCD that I think is important is your old POCD had all your maps on 11 by 17 pages. Which made it very difficult for people who didn't have like a commercial printer or a nicer printer to print a map out. What we've done is kept the maps at the exact same size. We've just like readjusted the layouts of the pages so that you get the same content. It's at the same size, but it's on an 8.5 by 11 page. So it makes it really easy for you to print on a sort of home printer if you need to. Or to look at this on a monitor, which is what a lot more people are doing these days. We've made all the maps a lot more consistent in terms of color and standard and design, so you should be able to understand and read them a lot easier. And then a lot of these early sections remain largely the same, and we covered a lot of the same those recommendations in our last two meetings. One of the areas that we've done a pretty substantial update for, and I think you all are going to want to review in a little bit more depth, is the housing section. So we brought in all of the demographic data and all of the development data from the state up to sort of the current state. So 2020, 2021 was the sort of last release of data. And we brought in, I think, hopefully a little bit more nuanced conversation to what's going on in Milford. And a couple of things that I want to highlight that you'll see highlighted in the text here is this age cohort diagram. So this is change in Milford over the last 10 years. And I will actually highlight this because I should say 2021. But over the last 10 years, you've seen pretty significant drops in your under 19 population, your under 35 or your 35 to 49 age cohort. You've seen actually a little increase in your late, I guess they're late millennials or early millennials. The younger millennials is what you're sort of looking for, and your later Gen Zers, and then a big increase in your population over 50 and over 65. And the result of that has been some pretty significant changes in your household types and the formation in your household. So a lot more 1 and 2 and 3 person households, a lot fewer 4, 5, 6, 7 person households. Now, there's a reason why we put absolute numbers. You saw a 61% drop in 7 person households, but really it's 160 households that you saw the change in. But the big changes you're really seeing are in that smaller household size. And that makes sense when you look at the rise in sort of the younger population and the older population. The interesting thing that you're seeing too in Milford is at the same time that your household size, which is this orange line, is going down over time, your number of housing units being built is going up. And that's because you have a steady population. So your population isn't changing, but as household size shrinks, there's basically more demand for more housing. So your population is staying steady, but you need more housing for the smaller houses. And that is having an impact, and I'll get to a little bit, in what's being built. Your housing units are still largely single family, but you do have a pretty good diversity of a multifamily units. So some 2, some 3 and 4, some sort of missing middle, that 5 to 19 units, and then the bigger sort of apartment and condominium projects. When you're looking at your bedrooms in multifamily, so this is only in multifamily, you've got a very nice mix of some a few studios, but mostly 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. And I think this is going to be very good for you all long term, especially as we start to sort out the realities of COVID. And some people are going to, I think, increasingly be looking for an extra bedroom that's going to be used as an office. So having that flexibility in your multifamily housing, I think, is one thing that you're really seeing, and this makes a lot of sense with the information that we've seen before, is when you look at the permit. So this is the number of permits, housing permits, that have been pulled since 2020. Really starting in since 2000. So really starting in 2000, you started to see a pretty big drop in the number of permits being pulled to build single family homes. And you started to see more multifamily housing development built. There was a pretty big drop after 2008, after the financial crisis, which makes a lot of sense. But really by 2014, you've sort of stabilized in that production side. So I think it's pretty important to recognize that a lot of that is driven by your demographics and changing demographics. And the other thing that's sort of interesting to see is that your median housing value, really took a hit in 2010, really started to see a drop really after the financial crisis. In a lot of ways, you've recovered from that. And the big thing that's been important about that is your production has grown coming out of that. So, as your housing market has stabilized a little bit more, starting about 2015, you've continued to see production of housing. So you probably are not seeing the issues that a lot of communities that really never recovered from the 2008 crisis were facing, where the demand kept going up and the production never really turned around and kept up. So it's sort of a good sign. So we've made some recommendations here about in your last POCD, you had some direction about where multifamily should be going, and that being in those corridor zones. And one of the things that we're putting out for recommendation for you all to consider is taking a much deeper dive at your multifamily zoning and looking at the regulations that you've got right now. You've got some things that are prohibited by the state right now. So you've got a lot of requirements about bedroom sizes and unit sizes, and that's no longer permitted. But also your multifamily standards are really a little bit of a throwback to an era when Milford was likely trying to pretty strongly discourage multifamily development. And right now you're really in a position where you probably need to be thinking about controlling that a little bit more directly. And one of the biggest issues, and we'll get into it in the zoning right now with your multifamily, is your multifamily zones pretty much treat all multifamily development the same. So if it's a 3-unit project or a 4-unit project, it gets treated pretty much the same way as if it's a 200 or 300 or 400 unit project. And that is going to end up being problematic for you long-term as you try and sort of make these nuanced decisions about what's appropriate and what's not in different areas. Your historic district standard or conversation remains largely the same. Your commercial corridor district, one of the things that I did here, and this really came, Jim, out of some of the comments that you had made in our comments or in our meetings before, was there needed to be a little bit more distinction here between what is the vision for these areas, sort of what is the top level idea, versus what are the concrete recommendations for that area. So what we've done for each of the corridor zones is put in a vision section and then put in the recommendations that would be needed to advance that vision for each area. And again, this is largely built off of the last POCD, but also based on some of the conversations we've had and conversations I've had with David. Each corridor gets its own treatment. One of the things we did when we updated the maps through here is in your current POCD, it just sort of identifies the area. And one of the things we wanted to do was bring in the land use information so that you all could see a little bit more clearly what is actually there right now to help inform some of these conversations. That continues through. The other thing that we've done is in the current POCD, each of these areas had some sub areas broken out. We just treated all of them the same. So we didn't try to group them by zoning district. If there were multiple ones in the same zoning district, we treated them as their own sort of discrete category. And I think that's going to make it a little bit easier to find and understand what the recommendations for each section are. The transportation and circulation section was another section that got a little bit more of an update. One of the big things that we did here is we brought in a little bit more data about safety into the POCD. So we included these 3 maps, which I'll go into really quickly here. This first one is just a heat map of crashes in Milford from 2017 to 2021. So there are going to be obviously some hot spots in and around the interstate, right? Because there's just more there. But we've highlighted sort of 2 sections in Milford that I think are really important to pay attention to. One is this, what I'm calling Old Gate Lane, I-95. I don't know if there's a better term for this area, but that's where those 2 truck stops are right off of 95. And there's some, mixture of industrial, there's some office commercial, but there's a really, really high incidence of traffic, or excuse me, of crashes in that area, and something really to be paying close attention.
Adam, I don't mean to interrupt, except that are you including data from actually on the I-95 or just city streets?
So it's a little bit of both. It's a little hard to parse the data, but when I looked at the data in that area, and so this map was what I'm showing, that's that area again. And what this map is showing is serious crashes and fatalities. And so you can sort of see the I-95 corridor, but there's stuff happening off the corridor. It's so close, it's hard to tell from the data which is on 95 and which isn't. But there's clearly some things happening. There was a fatality in that area. There's been a couple of fatalities, in fact, sort of right in and around that area that indicate that it's not just I-95. It's not just the interstate where there are problems, but there's something else going on in that area, which makes sense because it's a big transition. So, right, it's where you've got trucks coming off, going into those truck stops. You've got people leaving and coming off of I-95 in order to access some of the neighborhoods that are in around that area, the businesses around that area. So this is a top level analysis. It's really meant to say you need to take a look at this and dig into it a little bit more detail. The other area that we're sort of suggesting that you pay attention to is right around the mall there. There's been a couple of serious crashes coming out of the mall, and just south on Route 1 of 95. There's two other sort of hotspot areas. The other place that we want you to just kind of pay a little bit attention to is the area south, and I apologize, this may be a little off. I apologize, I'm just noticing it. This should be where these two fatalities are right here. It should be at that intersection of Route 1, and I think it's
New Haven Avenue.
New Haven Avenue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's been two fatalities there, a couple of serious injury crashes there. The roadway is pretty gnarly in that section, and really something to pay attention to in that area. The third map that we put together is your crashes of bicycle and pedestrian crashes. And Jim, to your question about the interstate, one thing that sort of jumps out at me is that there are a fair number of pedestrian crashes up in that area, right off of 95. So it's unlikely that that's happening on the interstate, and it's more likely that that's happening in and around those truck stops that are right there. Another area, obviously, we're seeing a lot of pedestrian, sort of crashes is in Milford Center. It makes sense. It's where you've got a lot of pedestrian activity. Nonetheless, because of the importance of walkability in that area, I think it's worthwhile to pay attention to that and to, look into any opportunities for safety improvements. One of the nice things, though, that we're seeing is if you go back, and I apologize that I'm sort of skipping around here a little bit, but if you go back to the map of serious crashes, the orange is serious crashes, the yellow is minor crashes, minor injuries, but there's no fatalities in that area over the last 5 years. And so that gives us a little indication that probably slower speeds through that area are making things a little bit. But nonetheless, pedestrians are some of your most vulnerable users. The other area that I want you to pay attention to is down in Devon Center. So this is really where you get that much tighter urban fabric. It's more sort of residential areas. It's a little bit more, you've got your businesses that are built sort of right up to the road there. So there's more pedestrian activity along there. But you're seeing a concentration of pedestrian and bicycle crashes down there that I think is worth paying attention to and looking into the kind of safety improvements.
Yeah, Adam, just a note that Route 162 is actually Route 1.
I was wondering about that. Thank you. Those are the kinds of updates. I kept seeing that and my brain kept being like, something's wrong there. And I never quite circled that or squared that circle. So thank you. But yes, it's right when Route 1 transitions down, right? It goes from a really sort of auto-oriented commercial space to something where the fabric is much closer to the street. So those are all places to pay attention to. The other thing that we did is I put a little bit of meat on the last POCD talked about complete streets planning. That's really evolved a lot in the last 10 years. And I put a little bit more meat on what a complete streets plan might look like. And it's for your sort of consideration around that. And then talking about studying some of those core areas and prioritizing the high crash and injury hotspots for improvements. The rest of the POCD is largely sort of consistent with the last POCD. I've incorporated a little bit more language into the sustainability section, but Jim, I know that's something that you'd be interested in talking a little bit more about. I'd like you all to see if there are any gaps there that we can focus in on. And then lastly, what we've done is in sort of digging into all of this, I started to look a little bit more closely at your zoning ordinance. And there is, I think, a real need for you all to do a modernization of your zoning ordinance. You've got a lot of text, very few tables, very few illustrations. There is been a lot of progress that's been made over the last 10 or 15 years in terms of bringing zoning ordinance up into much more user-friendly environment so that they are easier to understand. The public gets them a lot better. They're not so riddled with legalese that you're forced to try to parse out through the application process. And the other thing that is, I sort of mentioned earlier, is there's a need to sort of do an audit of your zoning ordinance to make sure that it is consistent with the state regulations right now. The one that sort of jumps out is that those minimum habitable space requirements in your multifamily housing, it was prohibited in PA 2129. So those are all things to look at and focus on as you. So that's a quick sort of top level view here, and can stop sharing if it makes sense, but I'm also open to any questions or things that you would like to know more about before you jump into your review.
Yeah, so thank you. That was very nice, and you did keep up a good pace there, Adam.
I know. I was
no dilly-dallying. Yeah, I think that it looks good. I think that there is great value in trying to call it a little bit. I think that I don't know the difference between the last two POCDs, but there was redundancy and there was stuff that was probably not germane and whatever. So I haven't done a comparison, but I think that your instinct is a good one to make it not quite as cumbersome, and that concept of user-friendly as it translates to this document from the last one, as well as good advice for getting into the 21st century with our zoning regulations, I think is good advice too. So I only had a little bit of time to go through, probably the first 10 or 15 pages. So I'll save the little notes that I had and add them to the notes I took during your presentation. And what's the thought? Do you think that we all share somehow in a Dropbox, or do we each individually send stuff to you, or to copy you, me and David, or if you, as we go through it, to look at whether they're minor edits or if there's stuff that needs a deeper look? What's your instinct and what's your experience, Adam?
Yeah, what I would say is if you all are comfortable, you can feel free to mark up the PDF and send that along to David, and then I can consolidate all of the comments together. If there are things like, hey, like you called out the road label was mislabeled, things like that, that's very helpful. But then if you have any sort of top level points of conversation, things that you want to come back to the group about, you can put that in an email if you'd like to do that as well. We'll also take them if you feel more comfortable, just like sort of enumerating your comments in a Word document, and you just want to reference the page and the section number, that's fine too. It makes it a little bit harder to sort of track back, so I prefer comments in the PDF if possible. But if you want to,
so if we save this as a PDF, we can just put comments in it, save it to our machine and email it off.
And email it to David, yeah, and then we can kind of pull it together, and that'll give me a framework. And then again, if when you email it to David, if you want to, include any, hey, these are 3 or 4 topics I really think we need to get into that, maybe aren't addressed in a comment in there. You may find situations where you just say, hey, you forgot about XYZ, the comment's sufficient, we don't need to talk about it. But if there are bigger issues that we need to get into, then that's the time to do it.
Okay, so going forward, the process I'm seeing now is to give us a little bit of time to go through it, get
Yeah.
comments and edits back to you. And I think that maybe we should have 2 passes at that, one individually between now and the next meeting, and then one meeting with just this board to go over and brainstorm anything anybody has thoughts on, right? So then we can get maybe a consolidated document back to you. And then at that point, after those adjustments are made, then we go public with a draft and we invite public input and comment.
I think that's an excellent idea. I think a consolidated set of comments from you all would be great. I'm happy to, sort of, if you all have a consolidated set of comments and some things that you have questions or you want me to come back, to discuss, I'm happy to do that. So I like that idea of kind of going through it. You guys, have your individual passes, you put them together, you put together a consolidated set of comments for me to review, and I can make updates and we can have a conversation and then go in public.
Does that sound good to everybody in the team here?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds, if we all get together and come up with a set of ideas we all agree on, I think that's the way to go.
Can we meet next week? Is 1 week enough? I mean, we're kind of running through calendar time. Can we meet meet just as a group without Adam, and then in 2 weeks get back to Adam, and then 2 weeks hence go public?
I'm good with that schedule.
It seems kind of aggressive. I mean, I'm down to try it, but I just realistically think it might be kind of pushing a little bit, but I'm willing to try.
Well, so if we go next week,
Well, I think we all need enough time to read and go over the document and kind of marinate in it a little bit. So
okay, then your probably instinct is right, Jimmy. Let's do 2 weeks.
Your final date might still work. I'm kind of leaning towards we do next week. We get together, come up with some ideas, follow up the week after with just us again, and then in 3 weeks get together with Adam, because and then possibly do release it in 4 weeks. But I think it's a little aggressive to us do just next week and then the following week Adam. I don't think we'll be ready for Adam in 2 weeks. I don't want to waste his time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we could, that's a good point. We could also say if we have a 7 to 8 meeting, we invite Adam back for the last 15 minutes just to give him an update. So if there is substantial, work that he would rather do sooner rather than later, having the input, that we don't need to take up a whole hour of his time, but we could just meet for 45 minutes, give him some input as to where our focus wants to be. And I don't know, does that help at all, Adam, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if in 2 weeks you all sort of had a set of comments, in a document for me, that would be great.
Okay.
I'm happy to show up if there's anything else. But what we could do is if you all had comments to me, let's say in 2.5 weeks, right? You meet in 2 weeks. Somebody's got to sort of finally put all the comments together in a document. I review it. If in 3 weeks I come, and I can come with any questions I have, right? I'll have your documents, your comments. I'll have time to review it, put together some thoughts on my side, and then I can come in and say, okay, yes, all of this makes sense. I don't understand what you guys are looking for here, here, and here, you know, or I think, you know, you're gonna have to consider that this is conflicting there. We resolve any issues in 3 weeks. I'll need a week to make the changes. So then that would mean a month from now, you could have a draft document ready to go public.
What does everybody's next week looks like?
Jim, so let's just say as a reminder, we have the regular board meeting on Tuesday.
The 7th.
Yeah. On Wednesday, the 8th, I sit on the Community Development Block Grant Committee. And we're having our public hearing on Wednesday night. I could do Thursday night if people want to meet Thursday night.
Yeah, I'm at a convention up in New Hampshire, so I'll be at some dinners or something. If we go to the next week, we are
Could do any
giving
day.
ourselves 2 weeks. We go to, I don't know about the 15th. That's a tough one.
The Ides of March.
Ooh, careful there.
But I won't be. The 9th, I am committed.
Okay. Well, do you want to do? We could meet on.
That gives us 2 weeks.
Yeah, you could do two. You could do Tuesday the 14th. You could do Wednesday the 15th.
Okay, either of those are good with me. What about the rest of the committee?
I'm okay with either of those.
Okay with the
I might-
15th.
I
15.
might have something the 14th. I'm not sure. I think my band's playing in Pennsylvania, but I'm not sure the date. I'm trying to find a calendar. But you could do without me. I mean, you know, if I pass my notes on, I'm pretty comfortable you guys are capable of moving on without me.
But you think the 15th is better for you, Jim, and also you, Joe?
Yeah,
I
Yes.
have to look. I'm not sure if I'm playing the 14th or I'm not sure which one, but I'll figure it out and get back to you.
Okay. And end of the day, if it goes to the 16th, does that crucify anybody? Go to Thursday?
No, that's fine.
Not a problem here.
That works. for me.
okay. That's okay.
Okay, so if you have a conflict, Jim, we'll kick it off one day.
When will you know, Jim?
I'm gonna try to find out like within minutes. So I don't know where to find the calendar. And my son, who does the bookings, he left, he headed to the studio. So I don't think I can get a hold of him right now. So I probably should know by the end of tonight.
Okay.
All right. So
Okay, so
March 8th.
we'll assume a meeting on either the 15th or the 16th. Between now and that meeting,
And as soon as Jim lets us know, David, if you would notify it a week or two early.
and I just want to repeat what everyone's tasks are. So between now and either the 15th or 16th, everyone's going to read the plan and come up with suggestions or corrections or whatever it is you come up with. We're going to get together on that night to discuss them and I guess consolidate what needs to be consolidated.
And I think we can actually get them to you
Okay,
sooner than that, right? So it could be the case that there's something to share that's a coagulation of what's everybody said, so that we share that info that we can all discuss. Well, that Joe thought this, or John thought that, or Jim thought this, or whatever. So that way we're all talking about the same issues at that next meeting, getting us ready for presenting stuff to Adam.
yeah, so I mean, if people can get that information to me by, Friday the 10th, which would be the end of next week. That way I'll have the time to prepare it, or Monday the 13th, because I'm in the cycle of, we have a meeting next week, and the second that meeting cycle ends, then I'm starting the cycle to prepare for the following regular meeting after it. So I have to just sort of juggle things. So I suppose the earlier people can get information to me for me to compile, the better it be for me, so I can get it, nicely
Okay.
compiled.
That's understood. And again, it's sometimes it's beneficial, I know, to me, because I get busy sometimes and not everything stays with me. So if you would send out maybe on the 8th, a notice to try to get memos or notes in by the 10th to everybody, then it'll, if they haven't already carved out some time for it, it'll remind them to carve out some time. And then again, if it goes to the 13th, not the end of the world, but get most of it in by the 10th. And if we, again, make sure we're noticed ahead of time for that 15th or 16th, whichever one it is. And obviously, we've all agreed that either one is fine if Jim, whatever works best for the Creamery Station.
Yeah, and then it sounds like we have that meeting. I can then, we'll take the information from that meeting. I'll get it to Adam. And Adam said he would like, a week to do what he's got to do, which then would bring us into, the week of the 27th, last week of the
Or
month.
the week of the 23rd. If 1 week from the 16th puts us to the 23rd, if we want to get aggressive. But the 23rd is the same week as a regular meeting. No, it's not. Yeah, it is. 21st is a regular meeting. So if we wanted to.
And then you have to remember we have the meeting on the 15th or 16th. I got to put together whatever it comes out of that meeting, get it to him, which would be, it might not be till 17th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we're looking at the last week of March for a meeting with Adam, and then maybe either the first or second week of April for public engagement.
Yeah. So
do we want to put something on the books for the 28th?
yeah, we could.
Do
you
we
want-
like Tuesday, 28th?
That works for me.
Anybody?
Works for me.
Tuesday, the 28th, since I heard works for me and silence from everyone else.
Okay, I'm looking at my band calendar right now, and that looks like that date's open. I think I'm in Pennsylvania on the 17th, which is a Friday. So the 14th or 15th should work fine for me,
Or the 15th or 16th.
or the 16th.
Okay. So it sounds like the 15th might, keeping with Wednesdays.
Okay.
So these notes, would you, David, would you rather have them on the PDF itself, like we were discussing earlier, or just aside in Word format?
Yeah, you can give them to me any way you want. I think Adam, it would be helpful to Adam to have them on the PDF.
Okay.
But like he said, if you're more comfortable providing them in some other manner, that's fine.
Yeah, I think, sometimes you can click on something and open up like a text box and
Yeah.
put your note in. So it's almost the same as a Word document, but at least it's the same document for Adam.
Right,
Going
Right.
back and forth to different pages
right.
or screens.
Now, something to keep in mind when we're doing this, because I think Adam's done a great job of shortening the document. Us going through there and seeing obvious, like Jim seeing 162 should be changed to Route 1 and typos or whatever. But we got to keep in mind the suggestions. I would like to keep things, I don't want to get too wordy either. So we got to, look at that. If we start suggesting and making the document a 200-page document because we start suggesting things, so we got to think about how we're going to tackle that before we approach Adam, kind of figure out a game plan, what we're going to give them,
Yeah, I mean, the thing also to keep in mind is I don't know that this group, that not this group, but the document is really off the mark greatly in any particular area. So I would think that once you read it, there may be suggestions or questions. There might not even be suggestions. It's like, well, why isn't this here? Or why don't we have this? Or should we talk about this? And that, that'll add some tweaking to the document. But in terms of all the boxes that we have to check off for having a technically complete document, we've got them. So I'm not concerned. And I could be wrong. I'm not concerned about our 80-page document all of a sudden becoming, a much larger document.
Yeah, what I'm hoping is that with a little bit more clarity and a little bit more organization, what it basically does is maybe it piques a couple of ideas in your minds about some recommendations or there's some questions that you all may have around, hey, could we look a little bit more detail at something like this? But as David said, that hopefully this should be substantially in sort of the area of the length and format that we're ultimately given.
Yeah, and that's really what this committee, is hoping for, is that we'll do a little blue sky, we'll do a little drilling down here and there, but you guys will make it a compliant document. And we already have a compliant document. The draft is probably a compliant document. So we're good there. So from here, it's just, did we lack vision on something that we need to readdress? Is there something that we want to remove or add, or what we have vision and then we have strategy. So I personally like that a lot. I mean, I think that is clear, and I think it helps the public understand it, and it helps future boards look at the difference between vision and strategy. So if we can help do the vision, we may not be around to implement the strategy, but if we give them a roadmap, it might be beneficial for them to get some stuff done that we won't have time to do on this particular board. So I love it. I think it's great.
All right, are we going to be sent this document? This document will be sent to us, correct?
You should have it. I mean,
You have it as an
was sent
email
out
and a
earlier
link.
today.
So you have a link that, Joe, when you open up the link, you can then save it to your machine
Okay, thank you.
as a PDF, and then you can edit the PDF
Okay.
or a parallel Word document. You could probably save it as a Word document too, or transfer it, but yeah, it's there. Good. Is there anybody that has anything they would like to consider or address before we go to the minutes of the last meeting?
I just want to say one thing. I particularly loved what he did with the demographics on the houses, because I get so much grief from people when I say population growth isn't changing, basically. They're like, how can it be? We keep building, we're building. And Adam was able to explain it in those graphs. So I'm happy about that, because I can use that.
That is
now.
really key to what's happening in this city. We're losing
Exactly.
people, but we're building more housing because people are living by themselves. So, yeah.
And your demographics are shifting, and I think long term you're going to have to really think about, there's going to be a lot more demand for services for retirees and people who are looking. You might have a lot more interest in your parks, right? More people who have got time to use it during the day, those kinds of things, and I think that's some stuff to really think about.
Good
And
point.
we do want to keep that younger demographic here. I mean, these are our children and our grandchildren. We want them to stay. We want to create that idyllic Milford that we all experienced.
Well,
Right,
there
well,
was
the accessory dwelling units.
There was an article, I think, in the New York Times that pointed out that Milford was one of the #1 places millennials were moving to. So it definitely is an aging city, because I moved back here. But I think there are some younger people moving here as well.
Yeah, no, I don't. It's a compelling place for people to want to stay and live, and it's good, and we're going in the right direction, and we're just trying to preserve it and kind of make sure we put the proper targets and put some arrows in the quiver to get us there. So
That's right. Trying not to screw it up.
wouldn't that be nice? All right, so we have the minutes. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve.
I second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Opposed, seeing none, minutes are approved. David, do we have anything else on the agenda?
No, I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank everybody then for your time and effort. And Adam, I think you and your team did a very nice job, and pleased that we're where we are, and looking forward to a really excellent document at the end of the day. So I appreciate all your work, and I appreciate all the input from staff and this committee.
Thank you all very much.
Adios, everybody. Excellent job, Adam.
Yeah, very good, Adam. Very good. Take care, everybody.
Take care. Thank you very much.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.